As we continue in our series called Pressure Cooker, last week we kind of looked at an overview of that, and today we're going to dive in to the life of King Saul. And as we look at this life of King Saul, he's dealing with all kinds of issues. And I think it's issues that we deal with often as well. We deal with anger and envy and jealousy and fear and bitterness and all of these things. Today, we're going to look at this sense of anger and realize that there's a lot of things that make us angry. In fact, even as we go about our days right now, we're sensing that a lot of people are angry. A lot of people are filled with anger for a variety of things. We may be angry because of the crisis we're in. We're angry because of George Floyd's death. We're angry because of misconceptions or whatever it may be. But we're walking around very angry about a lot of things. A survey was done about what makes us angry and what makes us mad. And as we look at the things that make us mad, we might even look like a picture that'll show up on the screen in a second, that from Inside Out. And this guy was mad and he was angry, and it's kind of how we are reflected at times. But some of the things that make us mad are the fact that maybe we get blamed, but we didn't do it. Maybe we are blamed for something, but we didn't do it at all. And so we just stand around going, why me? Why am I getting blamed for that? Another thing that came up on the survey was ignorance just makes some people, it just makes them mad, and it creates that problem. Or maybe you're a movie buff and you haven't seen the movie yet, and somebody reveals that spoiler to you, and you just start to well up with this sense of anger and frustration. Maybe others taking credit for your work, and that has frustrated you. You're maybe in a group project at school, or maybe you were at work working on something, and somebody walks in and takes credit for all the work that you did, but they're taking credit for it. And that can really cause us to be frustrated and angry. But this one that's coming up kind of got me. I think it gets a lot of us. One of the things that really makes people mad are bad drivers. And I don't know about you, but I have to deal with that a lot. And that's just one of the things that, it can well up within me. I don't know if it's arrogance because I think I'm a better driver than somebody else, or somebody just cuts me off and I don't, what's going on. But bad drivers can really frustrate me and raise that sense of anger, and I think it may be true for many of you as well. These are just some things that it creates anger and a possibility for anger. I heard a long time ago, I made the comment, hey, that really makes me angry, and they questioned me, and they said, wait a minute, what about that? What is it? Is that thing making you angry, or is it that you're simply responding with a sense of anger? And what ownership are you going to have in the anger situation? Because it's real easy for me just to blame, well, that makes me angry, this person makes me angry, that circumstance makes me angry. And I can be angry at a lot of things, but not take any ownership over my own anger. And I think that a sign of maturity happens when we begin to take some ownership over our anger. See, here's the problem. We get mad and we blow up over everybody. If we don't release it right, then we just blow up and it burns everybody, and it burns a lot of different people. You see, when anger gets the best of you, it brings out the worst in you. Yoda actually said this, that fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. And if we don't get a handle on that anger on the front side or the back side, we're going to have a lot of issues that we have to deal with internally and externally with everybody else that we blow up on. Because when anger gets the best of us, it brings out the worst in us. I would suggest to you that in my own life and in everybody else's life, when anger gets the best of us, we do some of the dumbest things, and we say some of the dumbest things, and we act in some of the dumbest ways, and we maybe didn't intend to do that, but we let anger control us and anger get the best of us, and in those moments, we kind of do some stupid things. And so we really got to be careful about that. So the question rises, how can I have anger in me, but release it in a way that isn't going to burn me or anybody else. How can I go about that? So join me in 1 Samuel chapter 13 as we dive into the life and reign of King Saul. He became king at 30. He would reign for 42 years. The first couple of verses in chapter 13 tell us that. And the reminder here is that he didn't handle his anger really well, or his envy, or his jealousy, or his fear, or his bitterness. And we're going to look at all of those things the next few weeks. He still stayed on the throne 42 years. It was still 42 years. And what that tells me, and that reminds me, is that you know what? If we don't get a handle on these things, life still goes on, but it gets real lonely. Because we've burned every bridge, we've burned every relationship, we've burned every opportunity. If we don't take care of this, it can get lonely. And one thing can lead to some other things that we have to deal with. So let's see what happens here in the life of King Saul in this one episode. And look at how anger affected what happened. And I think we're going to find ourselves there too. So here in chapter 13, Saul was 30 years old when he became king. He reigned 42 years over Israel. Now, he chose 3,000 men from Israel for himself. 2 were with him at Michmash in Bethel's hill country, and 1,000 were with Jonathan, that's his son, in Gibeah of Benjamin. And now he sent the rest of the troops away, each to his own tent. So he's got 2,000 with him, 1,000 with Jonathan, and a whole bunch of others that just go back to the camp. So Jonathan attacked the Philistine garrison that was in Geba, and the Philistines heard about it. So Saul blew the ram's horn throughout the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." In other words, he said, everybody come. I got my 2, Jonathan's got his 1, but now we've stirred up the hornet's nest of the Philistine army. Now everybody else, I need you to come on. And so it says all Israel heard the news that Saul has attacked the Philistine garrison, and Israel is now repulsive to the Philistines. Then the troops were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. Now, here's a little bit of history. If you go back and read some of the chapters before this chapter, and I would encourage you to do that this week, what you're going to find is that Samuel tells him and instructs him that you're going to end up at Gilgal and there's going to be a fight. But you need to wait 7 days for me to get there, to arrive, and I will offer the sacrifices required. Saul is not supposed to do this. This is Samuel's job to do. He is supposed to handle what's going on, and he's supposed to handle the sacrifices so that it all goes well with the army and we honor God with what we're doing, okay? But Saul's in his ready clothes. Saul's ready to go. Saul's sitting on ready. Saul's getting impatient. Saul's like, where's Samuel? I don't understand. I'm ready. The Philistines are gathering on the hill. I got troops coming in, and if you can feel this, you can start to feel the anxiety rising. You're going to start to feel the frustration rising because he's sitting on ready. He's sitting in his ready clothes. I use that terminology because that is something that I learned early on in our married life. And it took me a while to really work it out of my system. But I'm the kind of person that on time is late and on time is 10 minutes early. And so, I kind of run in that nature. My wife and I don't agree on that particular strain of thought. And so when we first got married, we were going to schedule to be someplace. We were going to leave at a certain time. And so I get ready, as men do. We get ready quickly, and we're done, and we're ready. And I'm sitting there. And I'm sitting in my ready clothes. And I'm looking at my watch. And I'm sitting in my ready clothes. And I'm looking at my watch going, how long is this going to take? As I said, it was early in our marriage. I have since, I've calmed that down just a little bit. I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it. But, so I said, hey, how long is it going to take? If I could instruct young men today in any capacity, don't do that. Because it's a funny little thing that happens in the universe. When a man is sitting in his ready clothes and he starts to holler at his wife, when are you going to get ready? Everything slows down. It is a tremendous movement of the universe. How everything just begins to slow down. I didn't understand that at the time. I just thought that if I just prodded along, we could get done faster. I have since confessed my sin to my wife and to the Lord concerning that. Because I not only sat there in my ready clothes and asked, we'll use that term, asked how long it was going to take, but I got impatient. And I got up. And I walked into the bathroom where she was getting ready. And I asked in person this time, how long is it going to take you to get ready? We're supposed to be leaving. Don't you know what time it is? That didn't go real well. That didn't go over very well. My dad used to say that would go over like a lead balloon. It just didn't happen real well. And it's my fault. It was all on me because I was getting impatient, and I was going to let that impatience begin to rise up and pressure up and turn into frustration. And then the frustration can turn into anger, and then it can just go south right quick. This is kind of what's happening to Saul. He's sitting in his ready clothes going, where's Samuel? Day 2, day 3. Day 4, day 5. Where's Samuel? Why can't he? I'm already here. Why can't he get here? Day 6, day 7. He said, wait 7 days. It's 7 days. Where's Samuel? Well, you see, in verse 5 it says, the Philistines also gathered to fight Israel. 3,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and troops as numerous as the sand on the seashore. Remember, Saul had 2,000. Jonathan had 1,000. He was getting other troops to come in from the camp. The Philistine army was huge. As numerous as the sand on the seashore. So now the Philistine army has come up, and Saul is under this time box. Now he's like, man, they are going to attack me. Where is Samuel? And he's just getting more and more frustrated. The pressure is rising because he's like, okay, something's about to happen here, and I know I'm supposed to wait on this sacrifice, and Samuel's supposed to do that, and I got to wait on Samuel, but I got the Philistine army. Oh, do you feel, have you ever felt that way? That the pressures of all these different things pulling at you, the possible shame or the embarrassment of not being prepared, or somebody calling you out on something, and all this other stuff, it gets, and now you're in a time constraint. And it just is adding to his problem. Well, it gets worse. Look in verse 6. The men of Israel saw that they were in trouble because the troops were in a difficult situation. They hid in caves and thickets, among rocks, and in holes and cisterns. Some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul, however, was still at Gilgal, and all his troops were gripped with fear. Fear began to set in. Some were going away. They were deserting the camp and hiding. Others were crossing the Jordan, which means that they were deserting Israel to be with the Philistines. And now Saul is just, he's had it, man. It's up to here. It's like, I need to do something. Samuel's not here. Where's Samuel? I mean, this is just rising, and pressure is just coming in to him. He said he waited 7 days for the appointed time that Samuel had set, but Samuel didn't come to Gilgal, and the troops were deserting. So Saul said, bring me the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings. Then he offered the burnt offering. You know, I got to thinking, how can I explain the reality of that verse? What that would mean to us today. I mean, we look at that and go, well, he waited, so what's the big deal? Just keep waiting. The other side of the coin may say, he waited 7 days. Samuel's not coming, obviously. So Saul had to do something, right? So he needed to do something he wasn't supposed to do. He went and offered sacrifices that weren't his to offer. It was something Samuel had to do. And so you've got all this. I'm like, how can I explain that? Well, let's go back to the scenario of my stupidity in going in and asking my wife, when are you going to get ready? Now imagine this. Imagine that I go back and I sit down and I wait a little longer and it's time to leave. The agreed upon time that we had agreed on to leave has arrived. Maybe she's still getting ready. So if you want to understand verse 9, this is what would happen. I've reached the appointed time. She's not ready. I go get in the car and I leave. Now, all the women are now looking at the men in their lives going, Guys, dumbest move ever if that were to happen. And that's what's going on here. Basically, Saul said, fine, you're not ready. I'm ready. You're not ready. Don't care. I'm leaving. I'm going to go on and do my thing. Catch you later. You got a car. Get there on your own. Yeah, that's not going to work out real well for anybody. And it doesn't work out well for Saul either, because look what happens. You know, he said, just as he finished offering the burnt offering, Samuel arrives. Right? Just as he finishes up, Samuel arrives. And Saul went out to greet him. And Samuel says, what did you do? And it's not a hi, how are you? Greetings, my brother, shalom. It's a, what'd you do? What in the world did you just do? Saul said, hey, when I saw the troops were deserting and you didn't come in the appointed days and Philistines were gathering, they're going to descend on me. I haven't sought the Lord's favor, so I forced myself to do this. I don't know if you have seen yourself yet in this situation. I mean, I have. Have you seen yourself in this moment yet? You know, where we have to learn to be patient, where the pressure's rising, anger's rising, and I've got to learn to be patient. I've got to learn to slow down. I've got to learn to wait. Because, I mean, maybe it took him a couple of hours to offer this sacrifice. As soon as he's done, Samuel shows up. Had he just waited, things could be radically different. The difference in waiting an extra 15 minutes and riding to the event with your spouse versus arriving at the event at separate times in separate cars from the same house. Radical difference of the next several hours of your life. Okay? Radical shift, radical difference. And this is what we're dealing with here. You know, sometimes things just change super rapidly, and that becomes a trust situation. I mean, Saul does his thing, the Philistines are rising up, and here they're about to meet, and Saul's got to trust. He has to trust that God's going to do his part, Samuel's going to do his part, and he's got to wait it out and do his part. It's a trust situation. But Saul is having a difficulty because he feels out of control. Things aren't happening at the appointed time. Things aren't happening in the right order. Everything seems to be shifting and it's all out of control. And I've got to find some sense of control. And what happens is when we begin to get out of control, that pressure just rises and frustration turns to anger, and anger boils and boils, and sooner or later it's going to boil over if we don't learn how to deal with it. I don't know if he was feeling embarrassment, whether it's legit or not, but, you know, the Philistines are rising up, and he's the king. He's the leader of the army. What's it going to look like if he's not ready? What's it going to look like if something happens and all the what-ifs flow through his mind, and it just continues to pressure up and pressure up? So he takes on a responsibility that it wasn't his to take. Then he gets caught, and then he gets questioned. You know, that's the source where we get angry too, isn't it? When we go about, we do something we shouldn't have done, and then somebody says, why did you do that? You're like, whoa, wait a minute. Or we get involved in something, or we say something, or we react in a certain way, and somebody calls us on, hey, what's that all about? And our immediate reaction, because we have a sense of shame or maybe guilt or we're embarrassed, we react with anger. Well, who are you to ask me? What difference does it make to you? I'm going to do what I want to. And so you see where that goes. This is how we respond and react when we let anger get the best of us it brings out the worst in us. And we've got to be careful how we deal with anger. We live in angry times. We must, as followers of Christ, learn how to manage the anger in a way that honors God and shows faith and trust in what God is up to. In each of these moments, whatever moment it may be, you have a choice to make. Each of these moments, you have a choice on how you're going to respond. How are you responding to anger? How are you lately responding in an angry moment when you get fed up, when you get frustrated, when anger's rising and the pressure's on? Are you blowing up? Are you burning everybody around you? Yeah, me too sometimes. And so we've got to learn how to manage that, right? Well, God's Word tells us a lot. And if we let God's Word speak to us, then we begin to see how to handle these things. You know, in and of ourselves, we don't have the resources necessary to handle this. Anger gets the best of me if I try to handle it all on my own. But when I let the Spirit of God begin to move in my life because of my faith in Jesus Christ, the Spirit of God can come in and assist and help and equip and enable me to do what I need to do. When I let Him do His job, it makes my life a lot simpler. And the same thing's true for all of us. If we will let God's Spirit do what He needs to do, it's going to go better for us. So when we look in God's Word, let me just read a couple of scriptures to you. First of all, Proverbs 29:22 says, an angry person stirs up conflict, and a hot-tempered one increases rebellion. Proverbs 29:22. One of the first things that we have to do if we want to deal with anger properly is we have to recognize the danger. We need to recognize the danger that blowing up can do. Listen, you let anger pressure up and then blow up out of you, here's what's going to happen. You're going to end up saying something you didn't intend to say. You're going to be taken wrong for whatever it is you're trying to do. Or you're going to kill relationships, kill a job even if you let it go too far. Or you can kill your marriage and kill your family because you're just blowing up. And when we let that become a regular part of who we are, that we pressure up and we blow up, we're going to burn bridges. And sooner or later, you're going to find yourself on an island all by yourself because nobody wants to be around you anymore. And nobody wants to deal with you anymore. Hey, we all let it get the best of us sometimes. And we're going to blow up and stuff happens. I get it. But it doesn't mean it needs to be a regular routine, or it doesn't need to be something somebody's expecting because they've seen you do it too often. No, we've got to settle down. We have to begin by recognizing the dangers of when anger begins to rise. If Saul could have recognized it at any point in these verses, it would not have led to what he did in verse 9. But he didn't. He let it fester. He let it get out of control. He let the pressure up, and the valve blew, and everybody got into a problem as a result of it. So we need to learn how to release that emotion in a careful manner. Psalm 37, verses 8 and 9 says this, refrain from anger and give up your rage. Don't be agitated. It can only bring harm. For evildoers will be destroyed, but those who put their hope in the Lord will inherit the land. Refrain from anger, give up your rage. Refrain from anger. Don't let that be your go-to move. Don't let that be your go-to choice. Don't let that be the description and the moniker that people label you with. Oh, he's just an angry young man. Oh, she's just bitter and angry. Don't let that be who you become. By God's Spirit, He can lead you into a better situation. Our hope is found when we let the Spirit of God lead us and carry us and help us in these ways. Because anger can overwhelm us. It is an emotion that is wired within us, and if used properly, can really bring about positive change. But at the same time, if we let it just blow up over and over again, it's just going to cause problems for each of us and for all of us. Ephesians 4 says this, "Be angry and do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity." What's he saying here? Look, anger is wired in. You're going to get angry. It's going to happen, but it doesn't mean we need to sin in our anger. In other words, don't let the sun go down. Deal with the anger at the moment. Don't hold it. Don't harbor it. Don't let it grow and fester like just this cancer out of control in your emotional life. Deal with it. Cut it out. Remove it. Refrain from it. Don't sin in it. Don't let the sun go down, but deal with it in the way that it needs to be dealt with. James 1:19-20 says this, "My dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness." So we need to recognize the dangers, and it will help set some boundaries in our lives. We need to realize that anger is a wired emotion, but we need to release it carefully so that we don't burn us and other people, and we don't create an unrighteousness that surrounds us. We need to let the Spirit of God come through us. Let the Spirit's fruit be evident in our lives. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and on and on. We need to let that become evident. Anger will happen, but we don't have to sin in it. We don't have to burn others with it. We don't have to blow up with it, and we don't have to spew it everywhere. We control it to honor God and glorify God, but it can also be a helper in times of change. I mean, we have passion. Let's get passionate about stuff, but let's not burn the bridges of relationships in doing it. And this is the situation that's happening here. So what do we do with this? Well, one, we need to realize, what is it that triggers me? Saul never thought about that. Saul never thought about that. Well, what is it that is causing this to rise up? Is it a relationship that I have? Is it stuff that I'm watching on TV or listening to in my podcast? Or what am I filling my day or life with? Is it because it's out of my control, and because I can't control it, now I'm angry about it? Is it because I feel shame or embarrassment because I stepped into a situation that I shouldn't have? We need to begin to take ownership. Own it. I mean, if you're going to be angry, but don't blow up on somebody about it. Let's control it in order to honor God and do the things He calls us to do. But we have to realize, what's causing this in my life? We use a word these days, what triggers me? What's triggering you? What is triggering you? Have you evaluated that? I mean, I've dealt with addicts for a number of years, and in dealing with it, we talk about this all the time. If where you live is a trigger for you to get back into your addiction, you've got to find a new place. If that neighborhood, or if that job, or if that you've got to find some place to get out away from those things that are causing you to have ease into addiction. I think, by and large, we're addicted to being angry today. It's an addiction. And there are things that we allow in to trigger us to get that way. And when we get angry, we don't see people. We don't see relationships. Anger just blinds us to all these things. If we're going to love the way God calls us to love, and we're going to work together and unify one another, it means that we have to understand these things. Put some space and some padding between you and the steam. When I have my Instapot and I'm impatient sometimes and I don't want to wait for it to cool down, and I want to throw that valve over, I make sure I have a pad between my hand and that when I open it up so the steam goes into the pad and gives me time to move my hand out of the way. Otherwise, if I leave my hand, I'm going to get burned. If I stay in my anger too long, somebody is going to get burned. I've got to give some space and some time. And we need to find our help in Jesus Christ. Ultimately, you can look and search and wonder, how can I fix this? And you can read all the pop psychology you want, and you can go to all the things you want, and you can read up on all the things, and you can try to self-will your way through. But at the end of the day, there is a resource. There is a help that is available to you. And it is by faith in what Jesus did, the opportunity for you to have a strength within you that is not of yourself. A guide that leads you where you can't see. A help that can lead you through difficult times that on your own you're blind to and can't help. And so that's what it comes down to. What have you done with Jesus yet? Maybe you haven't thought of Jesus. Maybe you haven't thought Jesus can help you in this matter. Maybe you haven't thought about Jesus at all. I would suggest that you take a minute and you think about Jesus. Think about what he's done. Think about what the Holy Spirit can provide. And realize, man, I'm failing at this. I need help. And when I begin to realize I can't do this thing on my own, I can't fix myself, I can't fix my eternal position, I can't fix the wrong, I can't overcome the wrong, and I'm out of options and I'm out of resources, maybe then, when you've hit rock bottom, and the only place you have is to look up, you'll realize in his great love, God provided Jesus because we needed him. And when I place my faith in Jesus Christ and I have a brand new life, I am transformed. The Spirit of God takes up residence in my life and gives me strength and help and ability. Many of you have already made that decision, but somehow along the way, we've set them aside and said, no, I can handle this. We can't handle it. Trust Jesus and let him do the work that needs to be done.